Hello and welcome to today's episode of World Class Real Estate. And today I'm joined by Mr. Sam Hunter and Mr. Ian Macbeth. Great to have you both with us. Let's go to Sam first. How are you, mate?
Very well, thank you, Mark. I feel like since the rebrand, it's still almost like every time you're like, world class real estate.
Yeah.
You're well.
You're absolutely right. And if you didn't listen to last week, I actually completely stumbled over my words. So given that it took me probably, 6 months to get it first time round, I think I'm getting there quicker.
At least people know it's authentic now because we just carried on. Like, hey, yeah, we made a mistake. Let's crack on.
100%, man. This podcast is the example of done is better than perfect.
That's it. Yeah. No edits at this party. We're just going straight through.
Yeah, and I often wonder, not often guests say, "Oh, hold on, the door's gone," or something like that. We've had it a couple of times, and are we going to edit that out? Like, nah, we'll just leave it in. We'll just roll with it. So, how are you, Ian? We went to Sam first. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Last week was all about culture for the group. So we had a good week last week. We had a good get-together training session. We had bowling night on Friday as well for all the HQ staff, all the marketing team and ops and property management and stuff like that, which was really cool. Managed to get to the football with the group as well, with the shareholders. Took them up Stamford Bridge to show them proper football because they're all Reading fans. We battered Barrow from I don't know what league they're in, 5-0. So that was an experience. So yeah, it's all been about culture. So yeah, there's good buzz in the office. We had a Macmillan coffee morning as well. Managed to raise 130 quid and everyone ate loads of cake. So that was quite cool too. So yeah, it's all been about culture going into October, the start of Q4 2024, which in itself is quite scary. How are you, Mark?
Yeah, I'm good. Business has been probably slower than expected in September, actually. It's quite a good time to do this 1st of October. Bit slower than expected, but had a decent sale fall in out of nowhere, really, last week, which was, they're always nice when you feel like they've come out of nowhere, aren't they? So it just goes to show, and I was saying to the team yesterday that even though, personally, what we've got in our business is our phones are a little bit quieter, we're a little bit slower on advice meetings than we would like, viewings and applicants a little bit slower than we would have expected. So we're trying to really generate the business ourselves. But I just said, it just goes to show that it can turn around very, very quickly. You can get a buyer that comes out of the blue, buys, quite an expensive house, or you can get a number of buyers that come out of the blue on a Tuesday and you've sold a few houses by the Friday. It can change very, very quickly in this industry. And sometimes I think that can be a little bit lost on some people. It's quite easy to get, a little bit down if the numbers aren't there, but actually, a couple of decent phone calls and you can turn the month and maybe even the quarter around.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've seen quite a positive kind of market after the summer holidays with the kids going back. I think although it hasn't maybe been the mad rush of listings that you sometimes see, I think from a buyer quality point of view, definitely down here, I don't know if it's the same in Australia and up north, but the buyer quality seems to be really good at the moment. They kind of know what they want. They're ready to offer. There's not too much window shopping going on, although they're doing a little bit of testing the water and doing the right amount of viewings. But for me, buyers at the moment seem quite educated in the fact that they know they're going to scattergun some viewings, create a short list, go back and look again, make sure finances are in order, and they're ready to make the offer, which is that's what we like, isn't it, as agents? So it makes our job a lot easier. Is it the same in Australia, Sam?
For sure. I mean, we were talking off air just about pipelines and business and things like that, and there's 92 days until the 1st of January. So we talk about what you do today comes to fruition 90 days later. Well, it's next year, right? We're recording this on the 1st of October. It is already 2025 for your real estate pipeline. And it's the same thing for us. We'll probably do 8, maybe 9 more deals this year. We've got a pipeline of probably double that of people who are looking to buy a house. Some of them ready to work with us, others earlier and not quite defeated enough to pay someone else to go and do it for them. But they're going to be next year's people, because realistically, if you bought a house today, you're moving in November. You buy a house in 4 weeks' time, you're going to be moving in December, and no one really moves. There's deals definitely done in December, but no one really moves house those last 2 weeks, like call it 20th of December onwards. We've got a sale that completes on the 16th of December, which is the Monday. And if I have anything to say about it, we will be on holidays on the 17th of December and having a proper break. So, yeah, there's a reason people are ready to rock and roll now, right? They've got a deadline that's whatever 92 less 6 or 7 days for Christmas is, right? So you've got 80 days to buy a house, exchange, and ideally complete. Is that possible? If you're organised and you've got an organised seller and you've got a good surveyor who's done some work up front, you've got a good mortgage broker and everything like that, maybe. But I think for a lot of people, they probably just want the certainty that they don't have to spend their evenings and weekends on Rightmove, not realestate.co.uk, on Rightmove into next year. They just want to get a result now, and they're willing to go out and have the hard conversations and do the good work to get it done now. And what a market to capitalise on for people in your two positions.
For sure.
That deadline that you mentioned, that is a real benefit, I think, at this time of year. Those sales that you get through in September, people who say we want to be in for Christmas, you don't really get that, I don't think, at any other time. You don't really get, maybe a little bit in the school holidays if you're dealing with teachers.
No, definitely not. Christmas is a special time, right? It's like a time where people they see everyone they know, they speak to everyone they know, and if they've got a new house, they want to have everyone they know at their new house. Friends, family, acquaintances, estate agents if they're good. There's a reason why that October quarters. I think we spoke about this, right? You make all your money this time of year. You turn an average year into a banging year because you did the work 90 days ago when we had this conversation, and hopefully it's coming to fruition now. And probably why you guys are seeing more serious buyers, and why something that feels like a flat month or a flat week turns around with a couple of phone calls. And I guarantee you, Mark, they're not phone calls that are coming to you; they're phone calls that you are making.
And that's you talked then about the 90 days to the end of the year. I had a conversation with a member of my team yesterday, and they were saying that, I'm a bit quieter, and I've not got any instructions that I know are coming next week. And she's like, well, what do I do? I said, well, you've got to put it in now, because those calls that you make today, if you've not made them within the last 90 days, then you've just got to accept that, and you've got to make them in the next 90 days so that you don't have the same knock-on effect. It's very easy to get into that spiral when you haven't got a level of business that you don't do it. But actually, and that's a big problem for estate agents, the up and down nature of it. You're busy, so you don't make the calls, then you're quiet, you make the calls. But you've got to make sure that you are putting the work in now over these 90 days so that when you've talked about it, when you break up for Christmas, you know that you're going to have a good Q1 because you've already put the work in.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Like, there's no secrets. It's just figuring out who you got to talk to, and ideally talking to. Before I did this, I was saying we've had a busy day today, and Tuesdays and Saturdays, like Saturday morning before everyone goes out into the market, is a big lead day for us. So we nurture a lot of leads Saturday morning before they're going out. It's good luck. It's doing this. It's ask this question. What are you seeing today? Can we help you? And then Tuesday, it's like, what did you see on the weekend? Did you buy anything? What's going on? So I'm frantically doing that before I come and join you guys. And it's like the progress that you see from being consistent, making sure you have those conversations with people. And like, yes, you spoke to somebody last week and they might not have replied, or they might not have called you back, but having the discipline and the courage to do it again, and to do it again, and to do it again. The worst thing anyone's going to tell you is where to go. And that's a good thing, because then you don't have to make that phone call ever again. Like, apathy is the worst, and you get that if you do nothing.
Yeah. We said we weren't really going to talk too much about the 90 days. We're going to try and talk about work that we can do to change next year over the next few weeks. But Ian, we were going to talk about who should you be ringing a little bit. Those stats that we saw online last week. Do you just want to run us through the stats that we talked about that we're going to discuss in detail? Because I think sometimes you might think that what is happening in the market is different to actually what the stats say.
Yeah. Well, I did call with Paul from 20EA. We were talking about a marketing campaign. Excuse me, funny enough. But one of the stats that he raised for me was one of the ones that Mr. Watkin had posted on LinkedIn with regards to the percentage of properties that sell with the first agent versus the percentage of properties that sell with the second agent. And we're talking about selling, not listing as well. And the stats for kind of the last 12 months, if you like. It's quite mind-boggling in terms of the amount of properties that go under offer when instructed with the first agent. The stats, I think, on Watkins' post was 93.2% sold subject to contract with the initial agent marketing the property, whereas the second agent marketing the property is only 6.8%, which when I put that in the WhatsApp group, Mark called bullshit on. Because the headline of it maybe was a little bit kind of clickbaity, but effectively, I think in the summary, it kind of raises the question, should people focus more on what Sam was just talking about there, the pre-stuff, the stuff that's not on the market? And my version of what Sam was talking about is passive marketing, social media marketing, being a touch point, being familiar to people that are not on the market yet. And I've, since Avocado, never knocked on the door, never will knock on the door, not interested in proactively touting. If someone wants to use me as an agent or my agency, they'll see what I'm doing and they'll come to me when they're ready. And I'm totally reactive in that basis with the touting. So yeah, it's an interesting one because touting is a big part of people's daily life in estate agencies, specifically in the UK. I'm sure it's the same in other countries as well. So yeah, that's the stat. Sam?
Do you think this is a question, and I'll save my rant depending on the answer. Do you think it's a big part in agents' life because it's really easy to send a letter instead of make a phone call?
I think it's because people have got FOMO in agency and they've got the fear of missing out. And I think sitting for 20 odd years in offices and watching people sit down with a coffee before a morning meeting, probably around 8-10, and scroll through Rightmove and start their day in a mad fest of frustration because they haven't had the listings that have gone on in the last 24 hours. The initial drive that they have to start the day is then to go and get one back. I mean, you hear it. We lost one there, we'll get one back. And it's kind of that, I think, more than, more than the laziness. I think it's the frustration of the competition and the FOMO is kind of my view. Definitely sort of where I am. That's what I've seen.
I think it's really easy, and it's so easy now to automate these letters. There's so many agents doing it, then you've got to question how effective they are. But I had a look into the stats because I always thought that this goes back to the stat that was, out maybe 5 or 6 years. That was it 40%? Rightmove put out a stat: 40% of houses sell with a second agent.
60% sold with a second agent.
Yeah,
was a stat from 2018, and it ran as gospel. Sorry,
what percent?
60% was the Rightmove stat from 2018, and that ran as gospel. Businesses, of which we built one, were built off that statistic for years. Not the truth now, I don't think. But how good's that? People listening to this podcast and becoming better real estate agents and winning listings and selling them.
Yeah, and I imagine the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. When I looked at Chris's post on LinkedIn, having, as you quite rightly said, that's bullshit. But I think there was something more in the explanation of it. So that is only looking at, those stats are only looking at successful sales. It as a bit of a footnote, mentioned about the 40% that don't sell or the 47% that don't complete or exchange. And basically, that was from January 23. What they're not talking about too much, and Chris did mention it to be fair, but what they're not talking about too much is that half of the houses that have listed haven't sold. And I think that's the stat that as agents we should be focusing on. It begs the question, whether or not you want that second-hand stock, because I think when the stats are that only half of houses listed are being sold, it means, do you want this? Do you want to be that 6, 7, 8% of take up? Do you want an 8% chance of selling a house when you list it? Commercially, that's madness. You do not want those second-hand houses because the reality is they've probably been overvalued and vastly overvalued initially. And that's the stat within that article that I think we should be discussing. Not necessarily whether touting, you can have that debate about whether touting is worthwhile, but actually the importance of only 50% houses are selling. Now, that is a conversation that we should be having with our clients and warning them about, the dangers of choosing the wrong estate agent first, or the dangers of choosing the wrong price first. Because would you really seriously go to market? Oh, should we just try that price if you've got a 50% chance of selling? Not 50% chance of selling with one or two agents, a 50% chance of selling. And we're not just talking about a flip of a coin here. You're talking about a major life decision for people.
Yeah,
I think we sort of jokingly said before this that anyone can make up statistics, and 75% of people know that, right? But what I took out of that is anything can be manipulated to suit your story, right? But what I also took out of that is whether it's January 2023 or October 2024, there's better real estate agents in the market now than there ever have been. And they are getting results. And they're more courageous to have those conversations up front. And in the markets like we find ourselves in now, going back to where we started this podcast, where there are very good buyers ready to make decisions, organized, prepared, like financially and emotionally ready to make decisions. It's not about the agent getting the price right or wrong to win that listing and keep it on the market. It's about getting the right buyer through prior and seeing where they feel it sits, right? Because then that protects the agent and protects the seller about making a silly decision, and it helps the agent understand whether they're first agent or second agent in, whether they want to take that business on, right? Because 50%, and I'm going to give credit to everybody listening to this show, and we'll throw some of the people that don't under the bus. We'll also throw a lot of the people who are selling their property under the bus as well. There are sellers out there in that 50% that do not sell that will not listen to rhyme or reason. They want £450,000 for their house, even though the market suggests it's worth $390,000. And you can show them that evidence. You can walk them through it. You can empathize. You can bring buyers through. They're like, no, we want $450,000. Stick it on Rightmove. Hope for the best. Walk away from that business.
But this is where
let somebody else fail, and then let the next person fail. But test it. Ask those questions first. Get people through who are actually looking for that type of property, who can pay their money. Like, you take a $450,000 buyer through a $390,000 house, they're not suddenly just going to pay the money because they can afford it, right? They'll be like, well, we've seen loads of shit way better than this. That's way more expensive. Sorry, we'd probably pay $380,000, right? And that's the market doing its job, not you. And then they either see their senses or they don't. And ideally, they're just not a statistic. They just don't list because they're not going to get what they want. That's good real estate, in my opinion. You're doing the right thing for those people.
Yeah, I was going to say, Sam, I think that's where there's onus on the sellers, but I also think there's confidence for the estate agents to make the right questions and have the right conversations with people as well, because it's very different going on a fresh valuation to one that's already on the market. But often the goal for the valuer is to list it, not necessarily to give the right advice always. And when you've got a property, like you say there, that's on at 450, which should be on at 400, for example, with a view of it selling at 390 in this case, that's quite a difficult conversation to have with someone. And not always do we see estate agents go in and have that honest conversation because they're scared of losing the business or they're scared of not getting the second listing. But the data should give people the confidence that if you don't have that conversation, you won't sell it anyway. And it's just a total waste of everyone's time, money and energy. And the amount of times that you see second instructions or second listings of the same property just come on, more or less same photos, same price, same write-up, just change of agent. And it's just, you look at it and you just go, meh, because it's just the same scenario.
Always, very rarely, if it is the same, so same price, same listings, it's the same type of agent as well.
Yes.
Another agent targeted on the wrong metrics, not paid enough to care, right? Versus you two or anyone else of your ilk, and every listener of this show walks in there and goes, for the last however many months, 50% of the properties that get listed for sale don't sell. And for the last however many months, 85% of the properties that we list have sold. So this is us. This is everybody else. You make the decision. But if you pick us, there's some more questions I've got to ask before we get that far.
And that is the conversations that agents should be having with the clients, because if you said about the stat of 75%, I wrote down the quote, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. So these things can be manipulated, to whatever way you want to do it. It's the old, to mention Chris again, it's the old Rightmove pie chart that you can manipulate to say whatever you want it to say based on whatever criteria you put in there. But these conversations that you should be having with people are they serious about moving? And everyone has been there where they've taken a listing where, you mentioned FOMO, and I think there probably is an element of that. But now the worst thing that a client can say to me is, we're not really that fussed, or we're not in a rush, or, those sorts of questions. That is fine if you don't have to put any energy or money into it. But the reality now, with everything that we have to do in the UK to list a house, is that it is a very expensive process to go through with a partner. I believe that we sell houses in partnership with our clients. It's a very expensive process to go through with a partner who doesn't really care. And that's not something that as a business that we're willing to do anymore, because it just costs too much. And we don't want to be anywhere near that 50%. Because if we're anywhere near that 50% of houses that don't sell, I think we're doing something seriously wrong, and we're wasting a hell of a lot of time and money.
For sure.
Is why market share on listings is the biggest waste of time for all estate agents. Is why in his ironic way, Watkins bangs on about the pie chart, because it is just a load of nonsense. Is the truth. If you've got
manipulated. For sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And the filtering can be so manipulated. And I know people love them, but that's for them. There's different types of marketing. And sometimes people need ego marketing. Sometimes they need a little slice of it. They've had a rough month, or they've had a really successful month. They want to feel confident. They want to feel good. And they post some ego marketing. I do it. We all do it. That's okay. Just don't make the whole thing ego marketing. Make it a 5 or 6% sliver. But it means nothing, because it's all comes down to profit. Like I've always said, it all comes down to profit. That's the lifeblood of any business, your cash flow. And that means focus on the stuff that gives you the best ROI. And in this statistic, that means making those calls that are going to impact your next 90 days, like Sam says. It's saying no to certain people, like you've said there as well, Mark. And it's doing the passive marketing that gets you familiar to people before they come on the market, like I say all the time, that you can do digitally, and it can be happening from your sun lounger abroad for a week because you've set it up before. And that in kind of the 3 different tips that we've all lent, because we're all different styles, if you do that stuff, you become world class, and those statistics are not relevant to you anymore, I would say.
I think you've hit the nail on the head about picking and choosing your battles. And yes, you have your ego marketing, and it's a small percentage of what you're doing out there with whatever it is. And it's the same thing with your touting. Like what we've just in a roundabout way identified is that there's still plenty of properties that don't sell, and they're either just unrealistic sellers, or it's just really shit real estate, right? And so figure out who's doing the bad real estate and tout those. So make that tout 6% of the properties on the market with the people that aren't giving a crap, aren't servicing them the right way, probably aren't having the courageous conversations. So you still have those opportunities, because let's say there's 10 appraisals that you get in a week, and they're all on the market, and 9 of them are ridiculous. But one of them just hasn't been told the truth and is open to hearing it, and it's a deal in the next 4 weeks. So rather than spamming out letters to everybody at week 1 and week 3 and week 6, pick the agents that don't do a good job in here, and we all know who they are, right? And go after them, and make sure that it's good messaging. And it's a bit of the same, Mark. It's like, hey, same thing with you, Ian. In your letter, you say like, hey, I wrote a video about how to sell your house. If it's a recorded video about how to sell your house that's been on the market for 6 weeks, scan the QR code and watch it. Hopefully it helps. And then you're connecting your 2 pieces of media. And worst case scenario, you get a follower. Like in our business here, we launched our social media on the 1st of March. So 7 months ago today, right? We had a bit of a business before that, but we wanted to build up our strategy. We wanted to understand stuff. We wanted to have a bank of content so that when we went on holidays or we were with our family, all you had to do is pull out your phone and push post. And we've done that. And we have been ruthlessly consistent every day since. In the last 6 weeks, there has not been a day that we have not got a lead from Instagram.
Nice.
Before that, we were getting one YouTube lead a week. And that was it. Now it's epic, right? In a really positive way. Not everyone converts to a client, but it's like, what do you guys do? How much do you cost? What are you doing here? I follow you. I listen to your podcast. And it's because we're doing the stuff that Ian talks about day in, day out. Very strategic, but also very authentic. You know, we get real estate agents saying to us, when you guys have time to buy houses, you're always posting on the internet. And it's like, no, man, it's all set up. It's done. Like, it's a business, not a job.
We had Clint Naykamp on here to talk about Google, but he's very, very successful on Instagram, following a very simple blueprint. And he actually did like a screen grab of a particular listing that had gone on in his area, and then put his face over the top of the listing on Rightmove and tore this listing apart because of the way it was marketed, the price, the write-up, you know, effectively being quite critical with it. And it went absolutely mental. There's over 1 million views of that video in its own right. Now, in a roundabout way, someone obviously in that million knew the seller, tagged the seller. In the end, he listed it and sold it. And that is Instagram touting at the perfect sort of level of blueprint that you could ask for. But because he'd been so aggressive in being critical online, made it much easier in the living room to have the right conversations. And I would also say that if you looked at that statistic we spoke about for new start officers or self-employed agents in their first year, or new estate agencies in their first year, it would look totally different. Because a lot of new start agents do go into the marketplace and they do list a lot of touts, and they do need those as the lifeblood. But because they need them and they need them in the pipeline, they'll go in there with a fresh, honest, direct conversation to make a point. Because if you can list and sell a tout in your first year over another agent, you have your best case study for the future. You know, that agent couldn't do that, and we've done this for that seller. And then people go, well, why? And well, come find out. You know, it is the perfect case study when it's done well. So I'm not saying people should never do it, but do it with, like you said, focusing on the niche. Which are the ones that are your primary listings? You know, which are the ones that you really want? Which are the ones that when you speak to the seller, they seem motivated and not blasé, like you've said, Mark, because there's absolutely no point in that. Prime example, actually, I had a call from one of the guys yesterday. Ian, I've got this landlord that's reached out to me. They've got a block of 8 on the market. So 8 flats. I think there's 6 2-beds and a 1-bed. It's on the market, and they're thinking they might change agent. So we looked on Rightmove. It's on with a London agent. It's nowhere near London. It's on at 2.4 million. It's probably worth about 1.9, you know, in its collective rights. One of the flats is also on the market independently with another agent. Nothing to do with the wholesale. And the price that it's on the market for doesn't correlate with the 2.4 in its own right. And they're both for sale. They've both been for sale since May of this year. And he said, what shall I do with it? And I said, just walk away.
Good advice.
You're just going to waste your time, because they're wasting everyone else's time. Just walk away, or you get them in for a coffee. You tell them that you want total control of everything, because they've got 3 or 4 other listings scattered around the area as well. And they have to listen to your advice. Otherwise, what's the point? You're just wasting their time and yours. So, you know, there's too much of that in the market sometimes as well, I think.
Yeah, my view, whenever I go into the living room when a house is on the market, or been on the market and withdrawn, maybe, you've always got to ask, how can I improve this house that is on the market? And it might be that it's full of stuff. So I went into one the other week, and I sat down and I just said to them, can I be really honest? And they looked at me like a little bit intimidated. They're like, yeah. I was like, you need to clear your house out. It's like, yeah, we know we're going to do it when we move. I was like, no, you need to do it now before you move. And sometimes it's just about having those honest conversations. And I left that house thinking, if they don't do that, I'm not going to list it. But they've been on the market, they've had viewings, they've not had the feedback that clearly everybody knows you need to clear your house full of, all the kids' stuff because they've moved away and left all the stuff there, for example. So you've got to go into the living rooms willing to be really honest with people. And I remember you saying it on this podcast years ago, Sam, sometimes just asking permission to be honest with people gives you that edge, because then they think, oh God, so I always look, how can we improve the presentation, the marketing, and the price? The price isn't the first thing that I look at, incidentally. If you mentioned some of those, if it's on one of those agents that, just doesn't present properties well, you've got opportunities to improve it straight away. But my question to you two on this, as we're talking about the tout, is, should we charge more to be second agent?
Well, yeah. I think there has to be two rules with a second-hand listing. Is you're going to have to do something very different to the norm. So at least hold on what your actual fee is rather than negotiating on your fee. I'm not saying if you're a 2% agent or a 1.5% agent, be at least that. You have no need to negotiate on a tout listing, and make sure that the price is at least affected or changed, that it's there or thereabouts. I think that's the two rules of a tout. We used to have that in the office, back in my kind of independent days. Did you get it down? Did you get the right fee? If the answer's yes to both, cool, it's a listing. If it's not, it's kind of like, well, you didn't do your job, did you? So yeah, for me, I'm pretty black and white with the fees. It's 2% for leasehold, it's 1.5% for freehold, and for a tout, I wouldn't take a leasehold anyway, personally. I have no need to list a leasehold, but I definitely wouldn't be charging any less than that standard freehold fee. For me as an individual, some of the agents are different to me, but that's what I would be doing.
No, I agree. When you sit there as, probably the more expensive agent in your area and they go, well, I'm only paying 1%. Well, it's irrelevant if you're not getting sold and you're not doing that. But I actually think there's probably an argument. Those stats would back up an argument that says if we've got a 6 to 8% chance of selling the house, then we should be charging you more money for our time and effort. You agree, Sam?
Yeah, I think so. It was interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Ian. It just shows there's a bit of work in leaseholds compared to freeholds, right? And I think, yeah, you own the right off the back of that. Your fee's your fee. I'll ask the question back to you. Is your service any different for second agent in to first agent in? You've almost got to do more work because you're playing catch up to the market and you've got to convince buyers who've discounted it to come back to it, and why.
That's my point.
There's a lot of phone calls that are like, was it the property or was it the price? And again, you want to list a second-hand home. It's just like, hey, I'm going to call every single buyer that I reckon seen yours ever and ask them, was it the property or was it the price? What's that worth to you? Or we can start again, do the same things again at the same percentage. But if that's your case, I'm not your agent. I wish you the best. I think that's a courage. There is courage in having that conversation for the first time, right? You'll either only have it once and it won't work and you'll just be too scared to do it again, or you'll have it once and it will, and people will be like, okay. And you go, wow, this is what being professional feels like. Like, again, in our business, people come to us when they're broken, defeated, or expecting a miracle.
Same as
that's it, right? And we have to go to them and say, why haven't you bought a house yet? And it's not necessarily, there's a bit more empathy in that, but it's like, why haven't you guys bought a house yet? And we run an exercise. And if we can't find 3 houses in the last 3 months that are in their budget that they would have bought, something's got to change. And bringing us on board and paying us money before we've even done it. So our fee is split, right? You pay an engagement fee up front, that's non-refundable, and you pay the rest when we buy something. We're not going to take people's money up front if we can't deliver. So how do we, Chase says, I just put my poo-poo hat on and I'm, pragmatist, but I think people really appreciate it because we're just like, you haven't bought a house because you haven't realized that real estate is about compromise. You haven't sold your house because you probably haven't realized that real estate is about compromise. We're going to have to compromise on something. Maybe it's an investment in marketing. Maybe it's the mechanism to get people through the door. Maybe it is the eventual offer that we accept. But to talk about that compromise and to have my advice and helping you along the way, this is my fee. This is my process. I'm going to ask you to trust me and ideally do as I say. That's what good real estate is, right? People do as you guys suggest.
Yeah, talking to buyers, my estate agency days, I was kind of made my name internally as a negotiator, not a valuer. I loved it. I loved being in the office. I loved kind of dealing with buyers, wrapping up deals, training trainees. That was my thing. Controlling the whiteboard. That was where I was in my zone, and that's where I kind of built my career, if you like. But one of the simple things that I always used to ask every single buyer: what are the 3 things you absolutely cannot do without? What are the 3 things you would like? And then we would have the conversation of the 3 things they must have, which might be driveway for 2 cars because they've got 2 cars. They must have 3 bedrooms, and they must have, I don't know, the drive must lead into the front door. They don't want parking around the side, for example. They're 3 non-negotiables. So that's my job, is to filter through to those. But then what are the 3 things that you'd really like? I would really love a downstairs toilet, or we'd really love an upstairs ensuite, or we'd like the garden to lead out to X, or whatever it may be. And then my conversation with them is, if I find the 3 golden things, is it 1 or 2 of those that are you going to be flexible on if it's the right property? And normally if they said, well, you find me those 3 things and I'm flexible on 2, it'd be lovely to have a downstairs toilet as well, but it's not the end of the world. And that's the buyer that I want to work with, because we're going to go, and sometimes when I ask it, they go, well, actually, we really want all 6. And we really want all 6 for peanuts. And it's kind of like, well, you're not actually ready to buy yet, because you still go out and do your marketing.
Not emotionally ready to buy it, because they're living in fantasy land, right?
Yeah. And
that is why most people take 6 months to buy a house.
Yeah.
Because they are seeking perfection and don't want to pay for it, or can't afford to pay for it, but are unwilling to realign. Particularly first-time buyers. They've left a very nice rental, or they've left a family home, which their parents worked like regardless of whether they bought a property cheaper than they can buy one now, they worked hard to get there. And then they worked hard to renovate it. They worked hard to change the kitchen and update things. Kids come out of that and they want that.
I say to the team here, in regards to both buyers and sellers, I think that they go through a process, because what you're talking about there, and there's some great rhetoric there, Sam, that you're talking on buy side, on sell side, that you just flip it for the touts and find out their motivation. But I believe that people, when they're buying a house, go through a process, and it's why, as estate agents, people from outside the industry don't necessarily understand it, because they think you can put an advert out and you'll get some leads. But as Ian said before, it's a much longer process, because buying a house is a much longer decision making process. Selling a house is a much longer decision making process. You might wake up one day and think, right, I'm going to buy a house today, but the house that you imagine doesn't exist, because, as you've said, buying a house is about compromise. But you've got to view a few to realize that. And the people that are really effective at buying a house, and maybe people that have moved house a lot of time, will realize it quicker. But people who haven't moved house, I would say downsizers would fall into this category. That process takes quite a long time, because they have everything they want. They just want it a bit smaller. And you're exactly right, Ian. That's a great question to be asking applicants, potential sellers, over the next 90 days, as we talked about before. Why are they in the market? What do they need? And what do they want? And as you said, if they want all 6, they're not going to be buying a house tomorrow, but maybe in 6 months they might, because they'll have gone, if they're motivated and out there looking, they'll have gone through the process and they'll have decided what they're willing to compromise on. And ultimately, as agents, that's what we need to find out. What are they willing to compromise on? And if we're going back to touting, are they willing to compromise on price, or do a bit of work to present the house better, or pay a greater fee to achieve their sale? If they're not, then they're not worth you wasting your time on, as I said before.
The downsizers is an important point, because you can have the same conversation with them, and it is the conversation you need to have. It becomes back to awareness. When you're in, not necessarily the living room, but you're in the property, you have to look around and you have to think, right, they're looking to downsize here. So I'm looking for, have they got a motorhome? How many cars have they got? How big's the dining table? What's the 3-piece sofa like? Because a lot of the reason why people don't downsize is because you miss the point of the only reason they have that dining room is because they hold Christmas for the family.
Yeah.
And that is the one golden ticket. It's non-negotiable, but they don't even realise that at the time. They don't want to do as much cleaning, and they want to be closer to the town centre to walk, and they want less bedrooms. But that is the ultimate reason they have a house, is because they hold Christmas for the family. And you've got to kind of see that sometimes, I've seen it with motorhomes. There's a lot of people that downsize. I want to go out and do the motorhome. Well, then you need the big driveway. But that is non-negotiable. But they haven't even thought about that because they just spent 45 years with a big driveway. It's just they think all properties have a big driveway. So it's kind of, you've got to be aware, and you've got to spark conversation that they're not even aware of, because like you said, they might not have done this for 40 odd years. So yeah, that's the difference between that agent that's up there in 9s and 10s and the ones that are 6 and 5s, is they're just rushing through without the kind of awareness, if you like, I think is really important.
Yeah, it's a very good point on those downsizes. And funnily enough, my mum downsized 6 years ago, I think. And I've always said to people, you can't buy a new house based on furniture. But her thing was they had a big dining table that they want the family to sit round. And you're exactly right. We had exactly that. And, we had numerous conversations, obviously, about numerous houses. And it was an everyday thing. The table won't fit in. I'm like, just get a new table. But it wasn't, the table was very expensive and had, probably some sentimental value for the people that sat around it. But it was more about knowing that she can host Christmas and family Sunday roasts and what have you. I think that's a really good point when you're dealing with downsizers in particular, that you've got to, drill down and ask those 5 whys, because they probably won't know. Shall we, just before we go, have a quick mention about, you touched on it very briefly, Sam. We touched on it on our podcast, realestate.com.au, not buying Rightmove. So we know you were right at the seat of negotiation, so they fell through. Was that your fault?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Hope you didn't put that one in the pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. I think Rightmove might look back on this and see it as a bit of a missed opportunity. They got deep pockets, clearly, but not endless pockets. And there's a lot of egos in boardrooms, and having not been privy to those conversations, who would have known how it went back and forth? But their market cap improved £2 billion in 4 weeks. So it's not bad. They're doing okay, even though they said no. And I think realestate.com.au will do just fine as well.
We talked about it, and you said about them about buying the strongest portal there. If you were a betting man, would you put money on them now starting their own or buying another?
No, I don't think so. I think they've got a pretty clearly defined strategy of aligning number ones. I don't think it makes sense to go, like, Zupa's already been listed, delisted, bought, lost value since it's been bought. I still maintain Zupa's like the best portal experience in the UK. For whatever reason, they just don't seem to be able to get the traction to get close to Rightmove, and I think that's just because Rightmove had such a significant first mover advantage.
Yeah.
And Zupa's big rise was when they were run by Alex Chesterman, who it was a real passion project for him. So he had the right people in the right seats, and now I think it's just a business, and business can get boring and stale very quickly. Rightmove makes so much money they can afford not to care. But I think there's an opportunity for them to make some meaningful change on their own without having somebody come in and buy them. I can't see REA going and starting from scratch, and I can't see them buying Zupa, and they wouldn't buy OTM because it's already been bought. So, yeah, that was their play. It didn't work out for them. They'll figure something else out. They got plenty of money. They'll buy something else.
Good news for estate agents in the UK or not? What do we think on that?
Status quo for estate agents in the UK, I think. Ball's in Rightmove's court now. Like, you've got all this capital. Clearly there's value in the business. Do something with it. like make it better for not just agents, but make it better for users as well, because it's not a great experience using their app. It's not a great experience using their website. They've got all this data, right? They've got every agent under the sun listing with them. I think you and I said that, Mike, when we were starting a real estate business in England. Hate them all, not use them. I'm getting a Rightmove subscription.
Yep.
So I think that agents need to be better educated by Rightmove, and it starts at the top as to the value that business brings their business. And I think for the fees that agents pay Rightmove, that Rightmove needs to deliver more back to those agents. And I think that they have the resources and the capacity to do so. I don't know if they've got the people to do so, because I don't think there's anyone that's passionate enough to care about making meaningful change.
Sounds like Sam's after a new job. I actually think that Rightmove have improved on that side of things recently, in that they've got quite a lot of trade. I don't particularly use it, to be perfectly honest, but agents could go to their Rightmove subscription and learn a bit. You know, it's better than it was, but I completely agree they've got a long way to go. I quite like Rightmove because I think it makes, you're right, there are better websites and apps to use, but from a buyer's perspective, it makes their life very easy because all the properties are on there. My belief is if you're not listing on Rightmove, you're not really, an estate agent. An estate agent.
Sure.
And I know people will have their different opinions on that, but my belief is if you're not listing on Rightmove, you're not really an estate agent. And
Agreed.
If you take the step to come off Rightmove, you're on a very slippery slope to going out of business. That's my personal opinion. It'd be interesting to hear if you've got the same view, Ian. But I wonder what it looks like for estate agents. I think you're right. Status quo. Rightmove don't want to change. Rightmove probably don't want change. They're incredibly profitable. So why not just keep doing what they're doing and keep putting the prices up? It's probably what we'll see.
Yeah, I'm not in the boycott Rightmove camp. There's obviously a load of agents that are. I don't like the bill. If I'm honest with you, it keeps going up as we grow. It's a pain in the arse, but it is what it is. As we grow, we make more money. If your bills go up, you need to turn over more money. So that's just business. That's life. It's going to carry on that way. My view on Rightmove, which I've always subscribed to with Mike and Avocado, is as simple as this. Just use the basic. Don't get upsold. Don't use the whistles and bells. I haven't found a single Rightmove product over 20 years of being an agent, and I used to run the Rightmove account when I was at a 10-branch independent. There is not a single product that I found that delivers ROI as good as other sources and areas. So, if you're using all the featured stuff and the valuation alerts, it's all nonsense. It's lazy agency. You're getting thrown in a five valuation fight. They don't know who you are. There's no marketing tee up. There's no familiarity. There's no trust. It's just like a checker trade. It's like, do you want to be the checker trade guy, or do you want to be someone that's getting uncontested business? So for me, just use the basics of it, the portal feed, and the rest of the features are just Magpie, FOMO, estate agents that are subscribing because they think their competition's got it and they can't do without it. But, £400 a month on a property feature when you could put £400 into Facebook and Instagram ads or YouTube ads or Google ads. So it's a no-brainer. Yeah. It's an absolute no-brainer.
Sure. It's no different here. Like REA, realestate.com.au, they do exactly the same thing. They upsell people into bigger packages because it's like, bigger ads equal bigger exposure. Not true. But the difference is that the clients end up paying $5,000 instead of $400, right? Instead of the agent doing it. So yeah, I think I wouldn't call us Team Rightmove, but it's a necessary expense to running a successful business, as are so many things. And coming back to where we started all this, if you're doing all the right things consistently every day, a little bit of touting, a lot of warm calls, a lot of social media, business takes care of itself. It might not feel like that if you've never done it for the first 90 days, but after that, you'll just be like, oh, wow, cool. Another inquiry, another listing opportunity, another really good buyer who probably has a house to sell as well. It's not hard. It's just
people ask me quite a lot on the Rightmove thing. What would it take for Rightmove to no longer be the monopoly that it is? And I always say the same thing, 26%.
What do you say?
26%. You need 26% of listings in the UK not on Rightmove for it to go below 74% of total listings, and then it's irrelevant. As soon as it gets to 74%, it's irrelevant. Because
why is that?
Because you're now going, well, 3 out of 4 listings are on Rightmove, but 1 isn't. And the public want the 1. They want the special one. So once it gets, if it ever got to 74% of total listings on Rightmove, it's no longer relevant because, like you say, the UX is not fantastic. The reason people go on it is because everything's there. Where if less than 1 in 4 is not on there, or more than 1 in 4 is not on there, I should say, Rightmove is no longer relevant because its only purpose is because it's all in one place. If it's not all in one place, it's no longer relevant. And I think 74% is the number where the public go, Rightmove, we need to go on the agents' websites. We need to go and find the properties because, like we know with buyers, they don't want to miss out on the golden ticket. If I put a post out about off-market properties being sold, watch the trolls go mental. Why are you selling properties without putting them on Rightmove? Because I'm selling them to my database. That's part of being on my database. People hate it because it's not even the property that they were after. They hate it. So 74%, 26% off, and that won't happen anytime soon.
Yeah, my answer to that question would be a miracle. And that it's going to take a miracle for that. I think the number might need to be higher personally, but I think it's going to take some form of miracle for that to happen, or a very, very long time, in my opinion. But I think that's probably quite a nice way to wrap up. Hopefully today has been of value, and maybe people might change their tactics and rhetoric on touts. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please reach out, share it on social, share it with colleagues. I'm Mark Worrall. He's Ian Macbeth. He's Sam Hunter. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you again next week.